So let's talk about the Daytona 500, the 2026 Daytona 500, where we just saw Tyler Reddick pick up the big elusive victory with Michael Jordan in 2311 Racing. And there was one big thing I really stopped caring about that really helped me enjoy this race a lot more. And I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about it as we kind of talk about the race here today. But my overall impressions are that I was honestly a big fan of what I saw today. I had a blast watching, and I'm looking forward to going to Daytona again in the summertime, of course, when we get to the end of the regular season. But the racing, I mean, it had very different dynamics throughout the race, but overall, I had fun and I stopped caring about fuel saving, and I feel like that really piqued my enjoyment a lot more than I have had in the past. I've always been really critical of the fuel saving, and you got to understand at the same time, first of all, fuel saving is just a strategy. At the same time, I would much rather watch drivers be 3 by 3 by 3, 10 rows deep, saving fuel versus riding in a single file train, or if they were sometimes when they go all out, it's just 2 by 2 by 2 and nothing is going on. Where at least when they're fuel saving, man, if someone has an issue, either way, even a fuel saving situation, if someone has an issue, we can still have that risk factor of like we can still wipe out half the pack of cars. There's still that kind of risk there, and I just kind of stopped caring about the fuel saving, mainly because it's not going to change. NASCAR is not going to change it. And if NASCAR was to make a change, we'd probably just continue to see teams find ways to exploit the fuel situation, because they have simply learned that that's basically the meta in these super speedway races, is saving fuel, especially at Talladega and of course Daytona with today's race that we saw. But I mean, in between that, yeah, we had the fuel saving situation, but like I said, I kind of just stopped caring about it. I put it to the back of my mind. I'm like, why am I caring about something that's probably not going to change? They haven't changed it to this point. It's just, I'm going to give up on that. And I found myself having a lot more fun watching that 3 by 3 by 3. I still knew, I was like, okay, unless something goes wrong, nothing is going to happen. But I was able to just kind of calmly watch it instead of just be in frustration for an hour of watching that. So that really helped. But as well, we had some interesting dynamics playing out with fuel strategy in stage one, where we saw Zane Smith and like 9 other drivers actually stretch it after that early caution with BJ McLeod, and we saw, of course, everybody else pit, and it didn't quite work out for them, which I thought was interesting to have those two different dynamics. When we had BJ McLeod wreck early on, I was like, oh boy, this is going to be an interesting race. Maybe not in a good way, but obviously it turned out really well, and we had some rain looming that was kind of in the back of everyone's mind. Fortunately, that ended up not being a factor at all, thank goodness. I think that was like the first Daytona 500 that ended in the daytime, I think, since 2016 when Denny Hamlin won over Martin Truex Jr. But even when they were going all out, I noticed a bit of a difference in the racing this year. Maybe the wind was a factor, but it seemed like the handling of the cars were a bit more important. That could be maybe, of course, attributed to the consistent wear of the racetrack surface, that as we continue over time, handling becomes more of a factor. But also there was a lot of wind, especially in like turn 3 off of turn 4. We saw Kyle Busch early nearly wreck himself, and Brad Keselowski saved him. We as well saw, Connor Zilisch off turn 4 make a mistake, get into, I don't remember who he got into, but he got into somebody, and then he got into them again a few moments later. And then Cody Ware, I don't know exactly what he was doing. He just somehow overreacted and wrecked a bunch of cars. So that was that was really unfortunate in that scenario. But when they were going all out, it really seemed like, maybe because of the wind, regardless, the handling was a bit more important today, and we saw a bit more space between cars, and that was allowing some runs to build up. So there was actual, reminders of like the Gen 6, kind of late Gen 6 super speedway racing that I love so much. That we saw today, and I really liked seeing how the momentum was kind of building between a few different lanes and whatnot, and actually having to see a driver kind of control the lanes again. We saw Ross Chastain doing it a bit. That was a really nice change that we haven't had in, I feel like, a long time at this point. So that was a really nice breath of fresh air. We saw some silliness, of course. I love Justin Allgaier. I think he's awesome, and I think very highly of him, but he made a huge mistake. And of course, with that crash with Denny Hamlin, and that ended up, wiping out several cars, including some really competitive cars like the 11, the 5, and many, many other drivers involved in that accident as well. After the whole Connor Zilisch one, that took out some competitive cars there as well. And Allgaier owned up to it and just said that was his mistake. I know I saw some people surprisingly going against Denny Hamlin, but I'm going to show it right now. Denny Hamlin has more than a car width of space right there between the 40 and the wall. So to blame him for putting a car where there was a wide open hole makes absolutely no sense at all. And Allgaier came up and unfortunately wrecked himself. It's just, that's kind of the way super speedway racing goes. I'm not really going to hold that too hardly against the 40 team and Justin Allgaier behind the wheel. That's just super speedway racing sometimes, and how close everything is. It comes down to a matter of fractions of a second in decision making. It's just the way things end up going. The final stage, of course, that was really, really interesting. We had a lot of that fuel saving. We were, dropping those lap times down, or up, I should say. They were going up quite high into the 50-second mark when they can run down in the, low 47s and high 46 seconds. So they were saving some hard fuel, of course, throughout that third and final stage. But like I said, it's the meta now. It's saving fuel, shorten your final pit stop, and then gain the track position to put yourself in position to actually have a shot to win the race. Now, if we could get a better race car, where it's not all about track position on super speedways, I feel like that would actually help the fuel situation going forward. But we know NASCAR doesn't seem to be very interested on changing the car anytime soon, unfortunately. So I think we just kind of have to deal with what we have right now and accept it for what it is, because I don't think, unless we change the car, I don't see any potential for fixing the fuel saving issue that a lot of people are really unhappy with. But we got into the final pit stop sequence, and we were pretty cautious through that final stage all the way up until that final pit stop, of course. And once we hit that final pit stop, it honestly kind of reminded me of like the Indianapolis 500, where everyone's just kind of pacing themselves, and they're waiting until they get done with that final pit stop, and it's go time at that point. It really felt like that, because we came out of the pit lane, we had these kind of smaller groups pitting together, which turned out to work pretty well, and obviously everyone got going, coming together, and all the groups, these micro groups, just migrating into each other and having to dodge each other. Some are trying to make themselves basically a roadblock to slow down the momentum of some oncoming cars. It was pretty intense to watch that stuff, and everyone coming together, and it all worked out until we got towards the end, and Denny Hamlin of course had his crash after Corey Haim, his own driver, somehow decided or forgot that you can't push like off center, and completely wrecked his boss, and of course the 20 of Christopher Bell. Both of those guys, their race was ruined there in the closing laps of this race, which set up for this absolutely wild finish that I really did not anticipate happening. And when I say that, I anticipated chaos, but and we got chaos. We got a lot of chaos, and I'm sure everyone's going to be very divided on this finish, and how it played out. Maybe the fan or the driver you're a fan of being in the mix might have also swayed your opinion on this. But personally, all of my guys were already destroyed. Hamlin, Larson, Van Gisbergen, Zilisch. 4 of my 5 drivers were already out of the running. Daniel Suarez was the only one left running at that point in terms of a competitive car. But we got down to the final couple of laps, and there was really interesting dynamics. Of course, you had the 2 lanes, and then the 3rd lane was coming, and you really saw Carson Hocevar working together with his teammate of Michael McDowell, and pushing him out in front of everybody, but then they would come back and they'd swallow up, but they would get linked back together and they'd push back out in front again until we were coming up towards that final lap, and really just not knowing what was going to happen. I was standing at this point not knowing, like I couldn't sit down. It was so intense. And Hocevar made that move to get to the lead of the race, and he's coming to the white flag, leading the way over Eric Jones, of course, in the 43, I believe it was, in P2. And we start the final lap, and the 43 gets into the back of the 77, turns him around. I was really happy with that, to see the 77 go spinning to the inside. Karma for a lot of the crap he's done throughout the 2025 season. What goes around comes around, although I'm sure the 43 was not trying to turn him there. But obviously, took out the 71, unfortunately, and a few others got involved. Huge save by the 24, by the way, of William Byron. And then Tyler Reddick, I mean, he even gets involved in this crash, stays in it. I mean, bro never lifted. And by the way, start of the final lap, Kyle Busch, or like 2 laps ago, Kyle Busch lifts out of the pack and says over the radio, he's like, we're running 30th. I'm not going to get us caught up in a crash. We're literally just racing into a crash. He was 100% right, because he ended up finishing 15th by backing out of the main pack. Great call, because let's be real, when you're running back there, you're not going to go anywhere because of the next gen and the super speedways. It's just so impossible to go from the back to the front, unlike, previous generations of our sport. So I think that was an incredible call from Kyle Busch in a now format that really rewards points and consistency. That was a genius move, and it worked out for him. But in terms of the race for the win, of course, that final lap, Chase Elliott, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., they kind of get out front. Elliott's headed down the back straightaway leading. I was certain a caution was coming once that 77 took others with him. I really did think it was over at that point, and I was really glad that NASCAR kept it green. And then, of course, we had, Chase Elliott get the lead with a big push from Zane Smith into turn 3, and everything kind of changed right there because of the fact that Zane Smith, instead of continuing to push him, backed off. And when he was backing up to Tyler Reddick, that changed everything for Chase Elliott, who I think probably wins the race in a few different ways if the 38 stays with him. But Tyler Reddick made the move to the outside of the 38 and cleared him, which I did not expect to happen. I thought it was over as soon as he jumped to the top, because usually they get stuck side by side and the car out in front runs away. We saw it in the O'Reilly race on Saturday as well. But this doesn't happen. Tyler Reddick clears the 38, gets to the back of the 9, and makes him guess enough to where he's going, to where he can then shoot the bottom. With such the run he had, Chase Elliott just had no chance to defend over it. And Tyler Reddick comes out on top as Riley Herbst throws like the worst block ever on Keselowski and wrecks everybody. It was such a bad block that Joey Logano literally wrecked himself trying to avoid the block. That's how just horrible it was. But at the end of the day, I understand that he's going for a Daytona 500 win, and therefore he's going to do what he's got to do, and he might not even maybe trying to block. I don't know. Either way, it looked pretty bad in my perspective on looking at it. But I mean, it's really cool to see Reddick get a 500 victory, and yeah, I mean, I know that finish is probably going to be pretty polarizing because it was a bunch of carnage, but I felt like the right car won the race. It wasn't like he had just gotten through a crash coming off turn 4 like William Byron did last year down the back straightaway. No, he made the passes and made the pass for the lead, come into the checkered to win that race. It was the right winner, and it wasn't someone that just lucked their way in by avoiding an incident, in the final couple of seconds, although he did avoid one, of course, at the start of that final lap. But I really enjoyed what I saw. The finish was so much excitement and intensity that kind of made up for the carnage that we saw, in my opinion. And it's really got me looking forward to Atlanta this weekend, where I think the super speedway racing peaks with the next gen. So I think we're going to be in for a really fun start to the season, going into COTA as well. Love the road courses, so I'm really looking forward to what's to come. But I would love to hear your guys' feedback down below in the comments on your thoughts on that race and the finish, and NASCAR's choice to stay green on the final lap after the first incident, which I think was the right call. I really hope that's a precedent we stick with for now. And yeah, we'll kind of see what comes out of that. But that's going to do it for me. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. Have a great day.